Captain Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked his scanner for the third time that morning. 3 weeks on Draken 7, and the planet still made him uneasy. It wasn't the red-tinted sky or the crystalline rock formations that jutted from the ground like ancient teeth. It was the silence. The kind of silence that made a man feel watched. His survey team was supposed to be collecting mineral samples from the northern sector. Simple work. Boring work. The kind of assignment that paid well but didn't make for exciting stories back home. Draken 7 was classified as a non-interference zone, which meant they could look but not touch anything related to the native inhabitants. And the natives here were dragons. Real, fire-breathing, intelligent dragons that the Galactic Council had deemed too dangerous and too valuable to disturb. Jake had seen the briefing files. Pictures of massive creatures with wings that could block out the sun. Reports of territorial disputes that left miles of scorched earth. Intelligence assessments that confirmed these weren't just animals, they were thinking, feeling beings with their own culture and society. The Council's message was clear: stay away from the dragons, do your job and get out. That's why the sound stopped him cold. It was faint at first. A rasping, wheezing noise that didn't belong in the geological survey area. Jake turned his head, trying to pinpoint the direction. There. Coming from inside one of the massive crystal caves about 50 yards to his left. Captain, we're reading some unusual acoustic signatures from your position. The voice of Lieutenant Tyler Brooks crackled through his helmet comm. You picking up anything? Yeah, I hear it, Jake replied, already moving toward the cave entrance. His boots crunched against the crystalline gravel. The sound grew louder. It was labored, desperate. Jake, wait. Tyler's voice took on an edge. Those caves are in the Dragon Territory buffer zone. You know the regulations. Jake did know. Chapter 3, Section 7 of the Non-Interference Protocols. Any human found interacting with indigenous intelligent species without council approval faced mandatory prosecution. The penalties ranged from 20 years to life imprisonment, depending on the severity of the violation. I'm just going to check it out, Jake said, though he knew Tyler wouldn't buy it. Jake, don't. You know the rules. Whatever's in there, it's not our problem. But Jake was already at the cave entrance. The wheezing sound was clearer now, mixed with something else. A weak, pitiful crying that reminded him of an injured puppy. His chest tightened. He'd had a dog growing up. A golden retriever named Buddy who'd gotten hit by a car when Jake was 12. He'd never forgotten that sound Buddy made lying on the side of the road. This sounded too similar. Jake activated his helmet light and stepped inside the cave. The temperature dropped immediately. The crystal formations inside created an eerie glow, reflecting his light in 1,000 different directions. He followed the sound deeper into the cave, his heart pounding. Then he saw it. Lying in a shallow depression in the cave floor was a dragon. But not one of the massive adults from the briefing files. This was a baby. A hatchling no bigger than a large dog, maybe the size of a German shepherd. Its scales should have been shimmering and bright, but instead they looked dull, cracked like dried mud. Silver-blue coloring that had lost its luster. One of its wings was torn, the delicate membrane shredded and hanging in tatters. Its left hind leg bent at an angle that made Jake wince. But what broke his heart were the eyes. Large, golden eyes that stared up at him with a clarity that was unmistakably intelligent. The hatchling knew it was dying. Jake dropped to one knee, his training kicking in as he pulled out his medical scanner. He swept the device over the small dragon's body, and the readings made his stomach sink. Severe dehydration. Multiple fractures. Internal bleeding. Body temperature dropping below sustainable levels. The cave walls around him told the story. Deep gouges in the crystal. Scorch marks from dragon fire. This had been a battlefield. 2 adults, maybe more, fighting over territory. And in the chaos, this little one had been left behind. Abandoned or forgotten, it didn't matter. The result was the same. Jake's scanner flashed a warning. Based on the current rate of decline, the hatchling had approximately 90 minutes left to live. Maybe less. Jake, what's your status? Tyler's voice cut through his thoughts. Your vitals are spiking. What did you find? Jake stared at the dying creature before him. Those intelligent eyes never left his face. There was no aggression in them. No fear. Just a quiet understanding and a wordless plea. He knew what happened next would change everything. Jake, step away. Now. Lieutenant Rachel Foster's voice crackled through his helmet comm, sharp and urgent. She was his second in command and she'd pulled him out of more than one bad situation over the years. But this time her tone carried something different. Fear. You violate non-interference and you're looking at life in prison. Think about your family. Think about your career. Jake's hand hovered over his emergency supply pack. His family. His sister Kelly back on Earth, still paying off her medical bills from last year. His nephew Tommy, who looked up to him like he was some kind of hero. His career, 15 years of service, commendations, a promotion track that would set him up for the rest of his life. All of it would disappear the moment he helped this creature. Captain Morrison, I'm pulling up the legal codes right now. That was David Chin, their legal officer, his voice tight with stress. Non-interference violation on a Category 5 sentient species. Minimum sentence is 25 years. Maximum is life without parole. Jake, please. Just walk away. The hatchling made a sound, a weak chirp that turned into a wet, rattling cough. Its chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid movements. Those golden eyes never left his face. There was understanding in those eyes. The creature knew what was happening. It knew it was dying, and it knew Jake was the only thing standing between life and death. Jake's throat tightened. He'd been in combat situations. He'd made hard calls before. But this was different. This wasn't about tactics or strategy. This was about looking into the eyes of a dying child, because that's what this was, a child, and choosing to walk away. Jake, listen to me. Rachel's voice softened. I know what you're feeling. But you've got people depending on you. Your sister needs your financial support. Your crew needs their captain. If you do this, you're not just throwing away your life. You're abandoning everyone who counts on you. She was right. Jake knew she was right. This was the smart choice, the logical choice, the choice any reasonable person would make. The hatchling wasn't his responsibility. It wasn't his species. It wasn't his problem. But those eyes. Those damn eyes. Jake's hands moved before his brain could stop them. He unclipped his emergency water supply, 2 liters of purified water meant for survival situations. Worth more than gold this far from base. His fingers trembled as he broke the seal. Jake, no. Rachel's voice rose to a near scream. Don't do it. Please. He ignored her. Kneeling beside the hatchling, Jake carefully tilted its head up. The creature was too weak to resist. Too weak to do much of anything. He pressed the water container to its mouth and let the liquid flow slowly, carefully. The hatchling's throat moved weakly as it swallowed. Some of the water spilled out, running down its scales, but enough went in. After a few moments, those golden eyes seemed to clear just a little. Jake set the water aside and pulled out his medical kit. His hands were steady now. The decision was made and there was no point in second-guessing it. He worked quickly, assessing the injuries with the efficiency of someone who'd done field medicine 100 times before. The broken leg first. Jake pulled out a compressed splint, the kind designed for human limbs but adaptable. He carefully straightened the bent leg, feeling the hatchling tense beneath his hands. It made a small sound of pain but didn't pull away. It seemed to understand he was helping. The cave air burned. Jake's environmental suit was designed to filter most toxins, but this close to the cave floor where gases settled, his lungs felt like they were on fire. His eyes watered. He blinked the tears away and kept working, wrapping the splint around the small dragon's leg, securing it with medical adhesive. Your oxygen levels are dropping. David's voice cut in, clinical and detached now. He'd given up trying to stop Jake. You've got maybe 10 minutes before you need to get back outside. Jake nodded, though no one could see him. He pulled out antiseptic gel and began cleaning the torn wing, being as gentle as he could. The membrane was delicate, almost translucent. He had no idea if it would heal properly, but he could at least prevent infection. He applied a thin layer of BioSeal, a substance designed to promote tissue regeneration. The hatchling watched him the entire time. Silent now except for its breathing, which was getting stronger. Steadier. Jake gave it the rest of his water, then administered a mild pain reliever from his kit, adjusted down to what he hoped was a safe dose for a creature this size. He had no manual for treating dragons. He was making it all up as he went along. When he finally finished, his hands were shaking. Not from fear but from the realization of what he'd just done. His career was over. His freedom was likely over. Everything he'd worked for, gone in less than 15 minutes. The hatchling lifted its head. Slowly, deliberately, it pressed its scaled snout against Jake's gloved palm. The touch was gentle, almost tentative. The scales were warm now, warmer than they'd been when he arrived. The gesture needed no translation. Gratitude. Pure and simple. Jake felt his eyes burn again, but this time it wasn't from the toxic air. He'd made his choice. And he'd make it again. Deep in the shadows of the cave, something massive stirred. Something that had been there long before Jake Morrison arrived. something that had watched every moment unfold with ancient, calculating eyes. Elder Garrett, known among his kind as Rithanos the Watcher, had seen everything. He'd been resting in the deeper chambers of the Crystal Cave system when the territorial fight broke out hours earlier. Two younger males, foolish and hot-headed, battling over hunting grounds. In their rage, they'd forgotten about the hatchling. Such things happen sometimes in dragon society. The weak were left behind. It was the way of nature. Rithanos was old. 2,400 years old, to be exact. His scales had long since turned from vibrant crimson to a deep charcoal gray, marked with silver streaks that spoke of centuries survived. He was massive, easily the size of a small spacecraft, with wings that could create windstorms when fully extended. But his true power wasn't in his size or his fire. It was in his purpose. He was a memory keeper. One of only 7 left in the entire dragon race. Their job was simple but sacred: watch, observe, and remember. When new species came to Draken 7, the memory keepers studied them. They learned what kind of beings they were, what motivated them, what they valued, and most importantly, whether they were worthy of dragon trust. In his long life, Rithanos had observed 43 different alien species visit this world. 43 chances for someone to prove themselves worthy. 43 disappointments. The Kellier had come first, nearly 2,000 years ago. They'd wanted dragon eggs to raise as weapons. Rithanos had watched them try to steal from nests under cover of darkness. They'd failed, of course. Dragon mothers were not easily fooled. Then came the Vexari, a species of traders who saw dragons as exotic creatures to capture and sell to wealthy collectors across the galaxy. They'd brought nets and tranquilizers. They'd managed to capture 2 juveniles before the dragon clans drove them off-world permanently. The Tyrillians had been scientists. They'd seemed better at first, more respectful. But Rithanos had watched them plant hidden cameras, collect scale samples without permission, and treat dragons like fascinating animals rather than equals. They'd left when asked, at least. That was something. Species after species, year after year, century after century. They all came wanting something. Dragon fire for weapons research. Dragon scales for armor. Dragon intelligence to exploit. Dragon territory to colonize. Always taking. Always using. Never once offering genuine respect or friendship. Rithanos had grown weary of it. He'd stopped expecting anything different. Other species were inherently selfish. It was simply their nature, just as it was the nature of water to flow downhill. Then the humans arrived 3 weeks ago. Rithanos had watched their small survey team with mild interest. They seemed typical enough. Avoided dragon territory mostly. Collected their rocks and their soil samples. Kept to themselves. Just another group that would take what they wanted and leave. When Rithanos heard the human entering the cave earlier, he'd assumed the worst. Here we go again, he'd thought. Another thief coming to take advantage of an injured hatchling. Dragon parts were valuable on the black market. Scales, claws, even blood. An injured baby would be easy prey for someone with dark intentions. He'd positioned himself in the shadows, ready to intervene if necessary. Ready to burn this intruder to ash if he dared harm the little one. But then something unexpected happened. The human, Jake Morrison, he'd heard through the communication device, didn't try to take anything. Instead, he knelt beside the dying hatchling. Rithanos had watched, puzzled, as Jake's vital signs spiked with stress. As other humans shouted at him through their communication system, warning him away. And then the argument started. Rithanos understood most galactic languages. His kind had been studying them for millennia. He heard the other humans explain the consequences. Prison. Life imprisonment. The destruction of Jake's career and future. The betrayal of his family who depended on him. Any reasonable being would have walked away. The cost was too high. The hatchling wasn't his responsibility. It wasn't even his species. But Jake didn't walk away. Rithanos watched, his ancient heart beating faster, as Jake gave his water to the dying child. Water was precious on away missions. That was survival gear Jake was sacrificing. Then came the medical treatment. Gentle hands setting broken bones. Careful application of healing substances. The human worked in toxic air that was slowly poisoning him, and he didn't stop. Didn't hesitate. In 2,400 years, Rithanos had never seen anything like it. The human expected no reward. No one was watching him, or so Jake thought. There was no audience to impress, no one to witness his good deed. He was throwing away his entire future for a creature he'd just met. A creature that couldn't speak his language, couldn't thank him in words, couldn't offer him anything in return. This was what dragons called Kalshira. The old word roughly translated to soul courage. The kind of moral strength that meant doing the right thing even when it cost everything. Even when no one was watching. Even when it made no logical sense. Dragons valued Kalshira above all other qualities. It was the foundation of their entire society. And in 43 species across thousands of years, Rithanos had never seen it displayed by an outsider. Until now. The old dragon felt something stir in his chest. Something he hadn't felt in centuries. Hope. When Jake finished his work and the hatchling pressed its snout against the human's hand in gratitude, Rithanos made his decision. This changed everything. This changed the future of two species. He stepped forward from the darkness, his massive form blocking the cave entrance. His scales scraped against crystal formations, creating a sound like thunder. His eyes, bright amber and burning with ancient fire, fixed on the small human kneeling before him. It was time for humanity to meet the Watchers. The Galactic Council chamber was the largest courtroom Jake had ever seen. It stretched nearly a quarter-mile in diameter, with tiered seating that rose up like a massive amphitheater. Representatives from 47 different species filled those seats, and every single one of them wanted his head. Jake sat in the defendant's chair at the center of it all, his wrists bound with energy cuffs that hummed softly against his skin. The chair itself was designed to be uncomfortable, positioned so that he had to look up at his accusers. A reminder of his place. A reminder that he was powerless here. It had been 6 weeks since Draken 7. 6 weeks since he'd saved the hatchling. 6 weeks of interrogations, legal proceedings, and watching his life fall apart piece by piece. His sister Kelly had stopped taking his calls. His nephew Tommy had cried when they told him Uncle Jake might never come home. His crew had been placed under investigation, their careers on hold because of his actions. The lead prosecutor was a Thraxian named Council Member Vorn. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms that he used for dramatic gestures. Right now, all 4 of those arms were pointed at Jake like weapons. "Look at him," Vorn announced to the chamber, his voice amplified through the council's translation system. "Captain Jake Morrison. A human. And here we see the fundamental problem with allowing humans into galactic society." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Jake kept his expression neutral, though his jaw was clenched tight enough to hurt. "Humans are too emotional," Vorn continued, pacing back and forth in front of Jake's chair. "Too impulsive. They act on feelings rather than logic. They disregard laws when those laws inconvenience them. They cannot be trusted to follow the most basic protocols that keep our galactic community safe." A representative from the Kelvin Union stood up. The Kelvins looked almost human, except for their metallic silver skin. "The non-interference directive exists for a reason," Council Member Vorn. "It protects developing species from contamination. It prevents exploitation. What Captain Morrison did wasn't just illegal, it was dangerous. He could have disrupted the natural development of an entire species." More voices joined in. A Zentari counselor argued that Jake's actions showed humanity's arrogance. A Pollux delegate claimed this proved humans thought they were above the law. On and on it went, species after species lining up to condemn him. Jake's lawyer, a human named Patricia Webb, tried her best to defend him. She argued mitigating circumstances. She pointed out Jake's clean record, his years of service, his contributions to galactic peace. But her voice was drowned out by the chorus of anger. "The prosecution recommends life imprisonment without possibility of parole," Vorn declared, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. "This sends a clear message. Humanity must learn that actions have consequences." The head counselor, an elderly Morphean named Chancellor Drevos, leaned forward in his seat. His species was known for fairness and wisdom, which gave Jake a small spark of hope. "Captain Morrison, you have heard the charges against you. You have heard the testimony. Do you wish to defend yourself?" Jake's lawyer squeezed his shoulder, urging him to read from the prepared statement they'd worked on together. A statement full of apologies and explanations about temporary emotional distress. Words designed to maybe reduce his sentence from life to 30 years. Jake pushed the statement aside. "I don't have much to say, Chancellor," Jake said quietly. The chamber fell silent, all eyes on him. "What I did was against the rules. I knew that going in. I knew what it would cost me. My career. My freedom. Maybe my whole life." He paused, meeting the Chancellor's eyes directly. "But I'd do it again. If I had to make that choice 100 more times, I'd make the same one every single time. Because that hatchling was dying and I was the only one there who could help. And I can't, live in a galaxy where we just walk past dying children because it's inconvenient or illegal to help them." The chamber erupted. Some species jeered. Others shouted for immediate sentencing. Vorn's face turned a darker shade of blue with rage. You see? Vorn shouted over the noise. This is exactly what I'm talking about. No remorse. No understanding of why these laws exist. Humans are fundamentally. The chamber doors exploded inward. Not literally, there was no fire or debris. But they slammed open with such force that the sound echoed like a thunderclap. Every head turned. The shouting died instantly. The holographic projection system activated without anyone touching the controls. Security officers rushed forward, trying to shut it down, but nothing worked. The system had been overridden by something impossibly powerful. The massive central screen flickered to life, and a face appeared. A dragon's face. Scales as dark as midnight marked with silver, ancient scars cutting across a massive snout, and eyes that burned with amber fire. The face was so large it filled the entire screen, and when the dragon moved, Jake could see rows of teeth longer than his arm. I am Elder Garrett of the Dragon Clans, the dragon spoke, his voice resonating through the chamber like an earthquake. The translation system struggled to keep up. Some of you may know me by my true name. Rithanos the Watcher. Memory Keeper of the Fifth Age. Chancellor Drevos looked like he might faint. Dragons never contacted the Council. Never. In 10,000 years of galactic history, not once had a dragon initiated communication with any other species. For 10,000 years, Rithanos continued, his amber eyes sweeping across the chamber, my people have watched this galaxy. We have observed every species that achieved space travel. We have studied you, judged you, and found every single one of you wanting. We have rejected contact with 43 species who visited our world. The chamber was so quiet Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Until now, Rithanos said, and those ancient eyes fixed directly on Jake. This human possesses something we call Kalshira. In your languages you might call it moral courage. The courage to be kind when kindness costs everything. The courage to do right when no one is watching. The courage to sacrifice everything for someone who cannot repay you. Jake felt tears sting his eyes. The dragon had been there, watching the whole time. Everything was about to change. Rithanos's words hung in the air like a sacred pronouncement. The entire Galactic Council chamber remained frozen, barely breathing. Jake watched as the ancient dragon's image shifted on the massive screen, showing not just his face now but his full form. He was colossal, easily 3 times the size of the largest spacecraft Jake had ever piloted. For millennia we have waited, Rithanos continued, his voice carrying a weight that made Jake's chest vibrate. We did not wait for the strongest species to prove themselves worthy. Strength can be used to oppress. We did not wait for the smartest species. Intelligence can be twisted toward cruelty. We waited for something far more rare in this universe. We waited for a species with the moral courage to act when it mattered most. Chancellor Drevos found his voice, though it shook. Elder Garrett, with all respect, the dragons have never contacted this council in 10,000 years of recorded history. Why now? Why for this one human? Because in 10,000 years, only one being has shown us what we've been searching for, Rithanos replied. His amber eyes fixed on Jake again, and Jake felt like those ancient eyes could see right through him. When Jake Morrison entered that cave he knew the cost. His companions told him explicitly. Prison. The destruction of his future. The betrayal of those who depended on him. Yet he helped anyway. He expected no reward. No witness. No recognition. He simply could not walk away from a dying child. The dragon's image shifted, and suddenly the screen showed footage. Jake recognized it immediately, the crystal cave on Draken 7. He watched himself kneel beside the dying hatchling. Watched himself pour his emergency water supply into its mouth. Watched himself work in toxic air to splint a broken leg, to treat torn wings, to save a life that wasn't his species, wasn't his responsibility, wasn't his problem. We call this Kalshira, Rithanos said softly. It is the cornerstone of dragon civilization. It is why we have survived and thrived for hundreds of thousands of years. And in all our watching, in all our observations of 43 spacefaring species, we have never seen it displayed by anyone outside our own kind. Until Captain Morrison. Prosecutor Vorn tried to interrupt. But Elder Garrett, surely you understand that laws exist for... Silence. The word wasn't shouted, but it carried such authority that Vorn's mouth snapped shut instantly. You speak of laws. Let me tell you what I have witnessed of your laws. I have watched the Kellier use their laws to justify slavery. I have watched the Vexari use their laws to permit genocide. I have watched species after species hide behind rules and regulations while committing atrocities. Laws are tools. They can be used for good or twisted toward evil. What matters is not blind obedience to law, but the character of those who wield it. The dragon's gaze swept across the entire chamber. Jake Morrison broke your law to save a life. He did this knowing he would face punishment. That is not lawlessness. That is integrity. That is Kalshira. Rithenosa's image grew larger, more imposing. And so, after 10,000 years of waiting, the dragon clans make an offer we have never extended to any species in galactic history. We offer humanity what we have never offered to you or any of you. We offer friendship. We offer knowledge. We offer alliance. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. Jake saw representatives go pale, saw others lean forward in disbelief. Everyone in galactic politics knew about dragons, but they were myths. Ancient, powerful, untouchable myths. No one had ever successfully contacted them. No one had ever formed any kind of relationship with them. And now they were offering humanity everything. Chancellor Drevos cleared his throat. Elder Garrett, forgive me, but what exactly does this alliance entail? Everything, Ritheno said simply. We possess technology your species consider magic. Energy sources that make your fusion reactors look like children's toys. Dimensional travel capabilities that would open the universe to you. Medical knowledge that could eliminate most diseases. We have spent 100,000 years perfecting our civilization. And we are willing to share it with humanity. If humanity proves worthy. And Captain Morrison? The Chancellor asked quietly. What of the charges against him? Rithenosa's laugh was like rolling thunder. What charges? You would punish the very person who opened the door you've been knocking on for millennia? You would imprison the human who achieved what all your diplomats and ambassadors could not? That would be foolish beyond measure. The chamber erupted in frantic discussions. Species that had been demanding Jake's execution minutes ago were now falling over themselves to dismiss the charges. The political calculation was obvious and instant. Humanity's value had just skyrocketed. No one wanted to be the species that punished Earth's greatest diplomatic asset. Within an hour, all charges were dropped. Within a day, Jake was a free man. Within a week, he was the most famous human in the galaxy. 3 months later, Jake stood on the surface of Draken 7, breathing real air without a helmet for the first time. The planet's atmosphere had been toxic to humans before, but dragon technology had adapted his biology. It had taken 3 days and didn't hurt at all. Just another miracle that was now possible. He heard a sound, a happy chirping that made him smile. The hatchling came bounding across the crystal field like an excited puppy, except this puppy was now the size of a small horse. Her scales gleamed silver blue in the sunlight, healthy and vibrant. Her wing had healed perfectly. Her leg showed no sign of the break. Skylar. Jake laughed as she nearly bowled him over, nuzzling against his chest with enough force to make him stumble. Her mother had named her Skylar, a name chosen specifically because humans could pronounce it. A gesture of friendship. Above them, the sky was filled with ships. Human vessels flying in formation with dragons for the first time in galactic history. Jake watched a transport shuttle pass overhead, escorted by 3 dragons whose wingspans blocked out the sun. His sister Kelly was on that shuttle, coming to visit. She'd forgiven him, obviously. Hard not to forgive someone who'd accidentally become humanity's greatest hero. Jake scratched behind Skylar's ear ridge, and she made a rumbling sound of contentment. You know what's funny, girl? He said softly. I didn't do anything special. I just couldn't walk away. I couldn't leave you there to die. Rithenosa's voice spoke from behind him, making Jake jump. The massive dragon had approached silently, which shouldn't have been possible for something that large. That is precisely why it was special, Jake Morrison. Anyone can be kind when it's easy, when it's safe, when it costs nothing. True character shows itself when kindness demands everything. Jake turned to face the ancient dragon. I still don't understand why it had to be such a big deal. Because, Ritheno said, lowering his enormous head until his eye was level with Jake's face, in 10,000 years, you were the only one who did it. Above them, the ships continued their flight. Human and dragon flying together. All because one person chose compassion over fear. Sometimes the most unthinkable act was simply being human.